Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Folks, uh, the topic we're going to talk about today has a lot of different branches to it. I may break it up into more than one video, but I want to at least start off talking a little bit about the subject of control. Now, the idea of control, whether we're talking about an individual, we're talking about a team, we're talking about culture, civic, local groups that we're involved with, organizations we work for, and so on. Up the lane, control can have a lot, it's a lot like looking, five people witness a traffic accident and five people have a different take, right? Or a different perspective, right? There's a different facet to that perspective. And it's no different here. And I couldn't possibly capture every facet. I want to talk about a few of those anyway. So if I do title this Control Part 1, that's fine. We'll just control the beginning, right? Whatever. If you think about control, it's easy to go to our individual conditioning, right? We're little and we're trained by, educated by, mentored by, led by, told what to do by, by our parents, right? Or those who raised us, right? And there is a level of control. Now, if you break it down into its real base elements, think about it from the perspective, I'm father, grandfather, and I think about, within the umbrella of a family, right? And even if you don't have a family, you can think of this as your team, and you can think of this as an organization as well, right? It doesn't matter, but I like to use that base element because a base group, because it's important. The volition of a parent, right, hopefully, is not about control. I don't think a parent ever wakes up and says, today I want to have control. Now, that being said, there is an element of control and having control overtaking you. And why is that? Because this young person, right, toddler and so on, doesn't know not to, attempt to put their fingers in the light socket, even though you should have plugs, but you know what I mean. Attempt to do things, the hot stove, the whole thing, right? All the things. There are no limits, right? They're going to open the cupboards and the thises and the that's, and they get into the things, right? And so we at that level, we can understand pretty easily where the whole concept of control emanates from what? Safety. Now, you can parse this out. We can safety, right? And okay, so there's that. I don't want the toddler to get into things, so I'm gonna what? I'm gonna do things, right? I'm gonna, put the cleaning supplies up higher, all the things. I'm gonna arrange the home, for example, in such a way that it is safe, right, for a toddler to, crawl around and do their thing, right? Have fun, explore, safely, right? But it's safety generated. You don't wake up as a parent, even when I was a young parent, you don't think, well, today I want to have control over my children. Now I'm not saying that doesn't, that it couldn't very easily be extrapolated into your brain to go, if I don't control them, they're going to get into trouble, right? There is that. If you start to notice tendencies, you're going to, there's going to be a part of your brain that goes, if I don't take control, things are going to go sideways real fast, right? And so you put in limitations, right? So as that toddler gets older, what? The things they can get into become potentially more dangerous until eventually they're out driving around and living life and doing their own thing, right? So as teenagers and so on. And then what? Do you think a parent saying, I need to control them? No, I want my children safe. right? I put in curfews and all these different things for what? For safeties, for a safety situation, right? I want my kids to be safe. I want, have good, thriving lives. You don't wake up, even when they get older, you don't wake up and say, oh, I need to have control. Now, why am I belaboring this from this base element? Because, folks, we can all, whether we were young growing up, or whether we're parents, or whether we're grandparents, wherever you are in life, even if you're an aunt or an uncle and you don't have kids of your own, or you've babysat friends' kids or whatever it is, coached teams, all the things, right? It's the safety, right? I don't want the ball players to get hurt, right? And so on, whatever team it is. Now, and then as we elevate this into our later, as our profession grows and so on and so forth, and our teams, we go into organizations and whatever it is, you could be wearing a suit and tie, you could be wearing, you could be somebody who's doing business in the city, right? It wouldn't matter. All of this is essentially the same thing. It emanates from a place of safety. And now think of that and then look at it from a risk perspective. And you say, okay, how can I mitigate risk? Well, go back to that kid. You mitigate risk by what? Doing the proper prior planning, right? Setting up your home in such a way that it's safe. Then what? As the child gets older, you give them instructions. In this case, if we're using that as an example for our teams, you're not going to, treat them like a child. This isn't this is not what the example is supposed to mean, okay? But it is to say that that you now do the things and you lay out the plan, right? These are our go, no-goes. This is what we do because we want the outcomes to be good, right? I need you to do this, and I need you to make sure you do your homework, whatever it is, right? All the things, so that you get a decent grade, so that all the things, so that now you can get a job later, blah, 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 go to school, et cetera, 1, 2, 3. Everything starts with safety, and then from that, it sets something up to we're having the best outcome, right? Now, in none of that, and I can say this for myself, have I ever awakened in a day and thought to myself, well, I need to have control over my team today, right? I need to take control over my team. Now, one can look at it through that lens and say, yes, but that's exactly what you're doing, is you're controlling your team. But am I? If I set up all my operations plans and my policies, processes, and procedures are all set up the way they should be, right? And they're living documents, the O plan, so that we have new products, we have variations come into the mix. What? The team doesn't have to always check up with the leader in those situations. And you get to the place where you're what? You're mentoring, you're coaching, maybe you're making some decisions where there's a fork in the road for decisions to be made, but you're not. And this also circles back into where micromanagement, right? So many go, gosh, micromanagement. Yeah, micromanagement on the face of it is bad, but why is it bad? Micromanagement is bad because it is glaring, it's basically a megaphone to say, I haven't planned and prepared my team and my organization well enough, so therefore I have to run around being, micromanaging things and that sort of thing. And keep in mind, folks, micromanagement isn't just from management. There's all kinds of folks in the chain of your organization. Guess what? They were conditioned. Now I come back to let's go back to our base element again. When I was using the family, right, the young family starting out, that thing, right? Now, if you didn't do the things that you were supposed to do to set your child up for success, then what? You're probably making, having to cuts to fix, and hopefully, God forbid, nothing worse. But the kid's getting hurt, right? As the kids get older, you don't put any kind of direction or any kind of, hey, this is the path. We can use the Wizard of Oz. if you don't say, hey, you stay on this, this yellow brick road, you get to Oz. You get off the yellow brick road, you're going to get hurt, and you're not going to be, you're going to miss out on opportunity. You're going to hurt potentially your chances of success. Micromanagement would then come in and say, I need to make sure that every step you take that you stay on that road. No, here's the road. If I have to babysit you, right? Because that's really kind of what it comes down to. Micromanagement is just somebody babysitting because they didn't do the work to set their team up for success by developing their the policies, processes, and procedures in their O plans in such a way that, for the most part, they don't need the leader to tell them what to do every second of the day, right? Now I come back to, because I know I've made a little bit of a turn off the path for a second, so I'm going to get back on the old brick road. Individuals within an organization, right? Even though your organization may be set up and you did, your policies, processes, procedures, and you've got your O plan, and you've got all your, everything set up. Great. But what you also have to keep in mind, and this is where it becomes tough on leaders, especially junior leaders, in my opinion, where it becomes tough is this. People come into work for your organization. Who are they raised by? Where did they come from? What were the elements of experience? You could call it conditioning if you want, but what was the training and the mentorship and the guidance they were given growing up, right? If they had good, good leadership, good training, good mentoring, good, good folks in that process, then they're probably making some pretty decent decisions along the path. But you can't assume that is the case. So people come into your organization, you don't know what their experience is. And even if you think you know what their experience is professionally, you really don't know what it is outside of professionally, right? Outside of the profession. When we're talking about personally, do you need to know that? No, and it's not really your business to dig into that. But awareness-wise, you really need to have that in your mindset. Now, this is where it can be confusing because some of your teammates think, well, it's starting to sound like he or she, right, whatever, are micromanaging. But sometimes, this is people who know me in the past know this is a saying. If I didn't say it, it wasn't said. If you didn't tell your teenager, I'm leaving the second car here when we're gone for the weekend, do not drive it, no matter what. Now, if I didn't say it, it wasn't said. If I leave and I didn't say that, right, people will just, human beings being what human beings are, well, I didn't say we couldn't do it, right? If you didn't say it, it wasn't said. Sometimes it's not micromanagement to call out something that may be a one-off, right? It may be more than a one-off. There may be a lot more than one-off. And then and this is the reason typically why we have meetings and we talk about different things. And what can happen is a team can confuse, right, micromanagement, control, and doing the due diligence as a leader. And that's called taking charge. A leader taking charge is to what? Safety, risk, right? Mitigating risk, right? If I didn't say it, it wasn't said because maybe it's not addressed and maybe it's, live action, right? It's an audible, right? I got to make the call and say, hey, team XYZ 1, 2, 3. That's not micromanagement. Sometimes you have to take charge. Why is that? Taking charge is the highest form of accountability. And the best team and the best individuals on your team are going to be those who step in and make the play without the audible. In some cases, they will recognize, connect the dots, and help to make those audibles too, right? So, and by audible, I'm just saying, for those people who aren't familiar with football, it's making the call on the fly because a situation has occurred, right? Or could occur. right? New product, new situation. Oh my gosh, we lost a bunch of product. Our truck's overturned. Blah blah blah. It's not going to get to the customer. The team has to figure out a resolution potentially, right? Depending on the scenario. We can insert about 1 billion scenarios right here, right? But we're not going to. So hopefully you can kind of get a grasp on the idea that control shouldn't be, right, recognized in a negative light, and that you should see that there's a safety element, and it can fall within control, but it is really about taking charge, right? And this can also stem into, and I'm not going to dive into it with this video, but on the next one, I think I'm going to talk about control and systems, because there's a lot of misnomers about systems, right? And some of that control and a little bit of that micromanagement that kind of interlaces between these three concepts. Think of it this way, folks. Anything you would do, right, for the best outcome in your own life, no matter the situation, people in an organization are no different. They're stepping up to take charge. And in many cases, taking charge is your department, right? It could be your task. It could be, the jobs and the skill sets that you're known for in your organization. Or if you're an independent, an entrepreneur, same thing. Typically, you're the go-to if you're an entrepreneur. So you are the one-stop shop. That being said, it's okay. It's much better on the individual basis to say, I need to control. What are some good things based on the things we've talked about in the past? I don't want this video to go too long, but just to give it a little bit of a taste, some of the good things to put a little control in, am I in control of my thoughts? If somebody says something, am I reacting or responding, right? Am I in control of what I say? My thoughts, my words, and what I'm saying. And am I in control of my actions? I'm telling you what, folks, you get those three down, and you teach, and this is really for the up and coming folks who are being mentored and trained and educated. You get those three down, I'm going to tell you what, you are going to win your entire life. Every day is going to be great, but you're going to be on a winning trajectory. Okay. And that's important, because when you're getting wins, hopefully on your winning trajectory, that means you're getting other people wins, right? It's not enough just to get yourself wins. You have to get other people wins. That's the whole idea of customer service. So, all right, folks, don't want to take this one too long, but control. Don't mix it up. Don't get it twisted. Make sure you understand that there's taking charge, and what does that mean? And I think what you will see is when you take it to its base level, it's about safety, it's about mitigating risk, and doing what you need to do to get the desired outcome, right? The most effective outcome. I mean, we've got $5.5 trillion of our, of U.S. GDP. 19% of our GDP is essentially waste in the U.S. I mean, think of it, folks. That's a lot of money. For every organization out there, that's a lot of money that's being wasted. And a big part of that is because we get things twisted, and then we start to react in ways that we probably shouldn't, right? And we're not really playing on the same team, so to speak. All right, folks, that's all for today. Remember to hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When you do this, not only are you helping to transform culture for the better, but you're transforming your own life. And remember, we can't transform anything on the outside unless we're willing to transform on the inside. And that's important. All right, folks, hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.